Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Today's guest is Marc Netka, CEO and founder of STS Education, a $29 million company that has a curated set of education-based products, services, and solutions. Marc is a recognized leader in the EdTech market with over 20 years of experience serving K-12 schools throughout the United States. Marc has also made an appearance on the Inc. 5000 6 times. So if you want to grow your company or just happen to be interested in the future of education, then look no further.
Marc, thank you very much for joining us today. This is a very interesting and special episode. We just finished our 500th episode on Monday, our podcast, and this is the first show, well, technically second show, but I'm going to explain in a second, that is actually going to be video-based as well. So thank you for that. And before we dive in, the first person was supposed to be Jeffrey Gittimer, an amazing sales expert, author. I just recorded him about, 2 hours ago. And I forgot to hit the record button. It's like, you do something for 500 episodes, although this is our first video one, right? And what happened was I upgraded the system to make sure that it had additional recording capabilities. And now instead of automatically recording, you've got to push a button. And I didn't push the button. So you were supposed to be number 2. You were actually number 1. And as soon as I mentioned before we started broadcasting here that it was Jeffrey, you can't make this stuff up. You did.
That's right. I showed you the book I just finished reading by Jeffrey. And I was telling you that I just handed this out and ordered it for every one of my managers in the company. And I've asked them all, at least my mid-level managers, to do a presentation at our next managers meeting on the book itself. So that's really funny. And by the way, I'm used to being called number 2. So that's all right with me.
To be number 2 in my companies. It's like, right. You know what? Just get me into the number 2. Let somebody else lead the way. It's fascinating. When I was reading your bio and looking at everything, education, continued learning is not only what the company's all about, but I mean, you really take that to heart within your company as well. And you actually pay employees to read. How do I get that job?
You know what? It's funny because a lot of people that come to my business and I show them my book club ask me the same question. Can I come work for you? And really, that's one of the reasons I do it, right? I want to be a place that people want to come and work. But it's more about, the essence of who we are. As a company, we're in the education technology space. I want us to be more of an education company versus a hardware supplier to schools. And part of that is making sure that continuing education is a big part of the philosophy of the company. And when you're an adult, as you know, the easiest way to continue your education is by reading. So I created the book club to give people an incentive. I didn't want to force them to read, except in the case of this book, because I figure managers I can force to read, but the normal employees, I wanted to give them an incentive to read. I figured the easiest way to do that was to pay them for reading. So that's why I created the book club.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start that habit somehow. Literally, I didn't really enjoy reading and start reading until I was probably about 23. Now, obviously, I read in school and I did what I had to do, but I just didn't enjoy reading. It wasn't until I found a book by an author that I really enjoyed that I started reading. It was given to me, funny enough, by my boss. It was a nonfiction book, or fiction book. It was made up. It was a story. Fiction, right?
Well, I have an employee who actually did come to me and say, thank you for getting me back into reading, and I've turned off the television.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, I just had a conversation with my son yesterday about reading because he's 22 years old. And as you can guess, he really hasn't read a book since he was in high school, other than a textbook in college. And so we were talking about one of my favorite books is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So my son was telling me how he was thinking about reading that book. He wanted to get into philosophy. So I brought home 3 philosophy books that I had sitting on my desk yesterday and said, here, I brought home these books. Read one of them. So he picked one and he went upstairs and he came back down and he said, I read, I thought I read the first chapter, but it was just an introduction by the author. But, I read it. I said, great. It's about getting into the habit of reading. So now make it a habit to, if nothing else, read at least one page a day, right? That's how you get in the habit of reading.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I read every single day, in the morning before I come into work, but it has to become a habit.
Yeah. No question. I mean, little things done every single day result in extraordinary results. And it starts with just one page or just one movement, one thing. The book that I read was Gold Coast. It was Nelson DeMille. It was set up in Long Island. It was about the mafia family, this attorney. They lived next door. It was very racy, very sexual. And I was like, I'm in. It's like, it's got gangsters. It's got money. It's got,
and now with technology, I mean, I not only read hard books, I like to read hard books, but of course I have a book on my phone in case I don't have a hard book with me. And then audiobooks now I'm really big into, and find that a lot of books that I never did read but should have, like I'm listening to Old Man and the Sea right now, right? Ernest Hemingway in my car. And I can really enjoy the book because it's narrated by, someone who's an actor.
Yeah.
So you really have no excuses anymore. You can take advantage of all mediums to consume the content.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on my bike this morning. I'm training for an Ironman, and that takes a lot of biking time. So I'm on the bike. I'm like, I'm not going to spend 2 hours just sitting here doing nothing. It's like, put on an audiobook, put on a YouTube channel. Let me learn something. There's so much content out there. I want to set the basis here, or set the foundation before we go too far in. And I want you to explain to the audience what exactly your company does.
So STS Education is an education technology company that has a curated set of purpose-built for education products, services, and solutions that we sell to kindergarten through 12th grade schools throughout the United States. So when I say curated, I mean we have passed we don't sell everything. There are lots of companies, and this is the difference between being, I guess, a hardware company that supplies hardware to schools versus being an education company that works in collaboration with schools to provide them with the technology they want. Curated means I've passed it through some sort of filter, and that filter for us is, was it purpose-built to be used in schools? Was it built with students or teachers in mind, versus just being any device? I like to use the example of, say, Chromebooks versus an Apple iPad. Apple iPads are used in a lot of schools, but it's not necessarily a device that was built for students. So can you make it work in school and make it work well? Yes, but someone has to put a lot of thought and energy into how that works in a classroom versus Chromebooks, which were designed with students in mind.
Mark, what do you see on the horizon with our educational system? How is it changing? How does it need to evolve? I was going to say, where do we miss the mark? That will be too long of a podcast. What's changing? Where do we need to go? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, I'm not an expert in education by any means. However,
but you're in this space. You see it all the time.
Right. I just finished reading a book called The End of Average by Todd Rose, and he talks about how antiquated our education system is, where we teach to averages and we give people grades based on averages. And, when I look at school, especially higher ed, and I look at technology and how things are changing, I wonder if these massive complexes that we've created, where the cost of education has gone up something like 500% over the last 10 years, where the cost of healthcare has only gone up 200%, and how antiquated the system of having to drive someplace to go get an education based on what someone else thinks is their criteria for me to be able to go get a job. It just doesn't make any sense. So, I think that, consuming content on an on-demand basis, and getting a certificate versus a degree, especially in a world that's becoming more centered around technology, is the way of the future. And I fear that traditional campuses will become giant wastelands, of where there's no students. And the problem is that, this university down the street gets an endowment, builds a beautiful fancy building, raises tuition because of the maintenance of that building, and then the school that's down the street from them has to keep up, so they go out and raise money. And it just never ends. So I think that's where we're going personally.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. It's similar to retail businesses. I would not want to open a business on Main Street and start selling something out of there. I mean, just the cost, the overhead will kill you, because you got the online version that everyone's going to the big Amazon, and what do they want? They buy. I found myself at a bike shop the other day, and I needed a bike pump. And this bike shop had one set of bike pumps. That's all they had, one model. And I'm like, I don't know how good it is. I don't know if it's good or not. I'm like, I'm going to buy it at Amazon. I was there. And it wasn't from a price standpoint. I just said, I want to compare what the different ones are, and I know I'll have it in my place tomorrow.
Yep. And I think that, the whole concept of just consuming content when you want to consume it at your own pace just fits most people's lifestyle today.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm starting to, and I love how you made that difference between a degree and a certificate. As soon as I thought a certificate, it was like interesting. Like one of the things I'm certified in is neuro-linguistic programming. I went to a program. I did it week after week. I took a test on it. I took professional professional speaking classes to get certified as a professional speaker. It's things, and I didn't have the skills there initially. I had to go and I had to learn those, and it was one specific thing that results now in a skill set that I can do that I didn't have before. It wasn't about memorizing something. It was about learning how to develop a skill. And I think so often in schools today, it's like, okay, let's just start memorizing stuff. And I think that bus is left.
Yeah, and I think in all fairness, most schools are trying to move away from that and give kids 21st century skills of critical thinking and collaboration and creativity, things around that nature. But it takes a tremendous amount of investment. It also gets teachers that you have to invest in training the teachers to think differently about how they train. So we see all that because we're involved in technology, and a lot of the tools that we sell are, meant to enhance 21st century skills or create 21st century learning spaces. So we're on the peripheral edges. We're what comes after they've made the decision to move in a certain direction. But we still get, it's interesting to see what's happening. I mean, I wish I was a student now.
Yeah.
With all the toys and tools they have. To me, I'm sure to them it's like, oh, I have this in my life. It's nothing new, but to me, it's totally engaging because I remember taking the big yellow sponge and cleaning the green board if you got in trouble after school.
That's right. And we had.
I guess I'm dating myself,
right? You're right. It was a different time. I remember going and getting a calculator at Kmart, and it was something like $50 for a little handheld calculator. And back in the 70s, I mean, that was a lot of money.
Yeah, I remember my first TI calculator,
yes,
financial calculator.
Yep, Texas Instruments, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about how you built your company. I love it. You started in the garage, and you had the original name was, what was it? EduTech?
Yes.
Right? All right. And it sounded like that went from 2001 until 2010. Did I get that time frame right?
Yes. I had very much a lifestyle business. I had no employees other than my mom. I showed up in shorts and flip-flops. When school ended at 3:30, I went home. My kids were young, so that worked out well for me. I never had to miss an event at my kids' school. But it was very much a lifestyle business. It wasn't a real business. I kind of, when 2008 hit, I realized that I had built kind of a house of cards. And if I went a month without getting any orders, I was in big trouble. So that's when I redesigned my business in 2010 and created STS Education.
Was it just the economy or something else that was going on at that time where you just said, hey, a light bulb went off and said, I've got to get serious about this?
Well, the economy was what spurted. I mean, I had a moment of panic in 2008, like I'm sure a lot of people did, but it's just my nature that rather than sit and worry, I sat down and planned. And so I would go to Starbucks every morning. I would read some books to get my mind in the right place, and then I would start writing in my notebook about what my business should have looked like if I had been doing it right. And I realized there were companies that started after me in the same space who had grown much larger than I had. So that really was the impetus, just realizing I had to change if I wanted to build a real business.
And did you go and look at those competitors? Did you start to see what they were doing, ask questions?
Yeah, I did. I actually, because I was thinking maybe I could sell what I had. So I actually went up and visited my largest competitor. They invited me up, saw what they were doing, realized the opportunity I was missing.
Yeah.
And visited another competitor as well, who actually I went down the road of trying to sell my business to, and created a business plan for them based on them acquiring me. They ended up pissing me off, and I said, "Screw you!"
I'm going to go
took that business plan and created STS.
Excellent. Yeah. And the reason I want to bring that up is, I see so often that entrepreneurs and business owners will disregard the competition, kind of push it off. It's like, we don't have any competition, or they're not really competition. They're not really doing it well. There's so much that you can learn from people in your space. One, what to do, and sometimes what not to do. But it really takes an intelligent, I think, leader to go, you know what? They're a competitor. They have some market space. They're doing something right. Somebody's paying them something. The doors are still open. They're making profits. They've got business. Something's happening. What can I learn from them? And those are the entrepreneurs, those are the CEOs that really take off. And it's clear by what you've been able to do in the last 7 years, right? 2010. I mean, extraordinary.
One thing I've really been fortunate and good at, I guess, maybe it's just a testament to how good a sales guy I am, but I have literally been able to get invited to every single one of my competitors' facilities and go meet with them and talk to them about business.
That's
and
great.
Maybe it's also part that I don't really keep any secrets. Like, I probably talk too much when I go, and maybe they get more out of it than I do. I don't know, but I literally have been into pretty much every one of my competitors' facilities and talked with their CEOs about what they're doing, and it has helped me.
That's great. I mean, you ended up on the Inc. 5000 list 5 times, 6 times?
6 years in a row, yes.
6 years in a row. The Inc. 500 list, 3 of those years?
Yes.
I mean, dude.
2 of those years, I think.
2 of those years.
I forget, but
impressive.
Thanks. I mean,
No, don't go all, come on.
Well,
man.
I kind of joke about it. I mean, it's a nice honor, but I almost see it as more of a marketing thing, because none of those companies, you can't tell which companies on that list are profitable.
Well, that's
right. You only know about revenue. So the company that made it 2 years in a row at number 1 was out of business 3 years later. So, I take it with a grain of salt. But having said that, I think that's one of the problems with a lot of entrepreneurs or A-type personalities is we tend to minimize our successes.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why I journal every day and try to write down what I've done so that I can look back and say, you know what, I did accomplish something this year.
Yeah.
Versus just being super critical about we stink at this is no good. And that tends to be how we operate. A lot of us.
We're all kind of wired that way. One of the things that I've started probably about 8 years ago is when I do my annual planning, I sit down for 4 days and I plan out next year where we're going as an organization. And it's a review also of the current year. What went well, what didn't go well. I write down the lessons, because there's always some lessons in there where I screwed up. I'm like, I don't want to do that again. So and I've done this, literally went back to when I was a caddy and wrote down some of the lessons that I could have done a little bit better. So I just, write them down, I don't have to visit them every day, but just, I know I have some lessons there. But what I did was I found myself not being grateful and celebrating the wins. We forget about them. And anytime something comes off my list that I got done personally over the organization, we capture them versus taking them off the list. We remove them from, active to completed. And then part of the review process is to review the wins. And it's amazing. It was like,
and celebrate them.
Yeah. It was only like 6 months ago. And it's like, oh yeah, we did that. It's like, damn, we really we've got to celebrate, because what happens is our nervous system becomes very accustomed to how we treat ourselves. And if we're constantly treating ourselves as like, it wasn't a big deal. It's not a big deal. But if we start celebrating those things and little things, I forget who it was. You know what? It was Jeffrey. This is weird. It was Jeffrey Gittimer. I heard him speak 15 years ago, and his daughter was real young, and he taught her to always celebrate things. And she was always spilling her milk in the morning at breakfast, and they would celebrate the first spill of the day. So she'd spill her milk, and she's like, first spill of the day.
I think that's in his book, actually, in his Yes Attitude book. He recounts that, and he said, wow, she's got a positive attitude.
Yes. I forgot that. I should have brought that up. I should have hit the record button also, but
one of the things we do at our companies, we try to have all hands meetings, we call them, once a month, where there's no negative things talked about, right? Employees can give shout outs to other people in the company who have done something extraordinary or helped them with their daily job. We celebrate birthdays and work anniversaries. We have a monthly barbecue at the last Friday of every month, and we invite our customers to come with us, and we do all this stuff at the barbecue.
Yeah. Because
otherwise you do get in this trap of just talking about the negative all the time. Every meeting's about a problem, every email's about a problem, right? Yeah. So you just need to celebrate successes.
Yeah, but the problems are always there, and they never go away. That's one thing when I'm mentoring young entrepreneurs. There was like, when am I going to get to the point where I don't have any more problems?
Never.
That's the answer.
There is a time, but you're about 6 feet under.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's its own problem.
I don't ever pray for no problems. I prayed to become a better man to handle the problems that come my way. They just don't go away. It's funny because for younger entrepreneurs, you just think, it's like you get to the point where it's not an issue. They're just bigger issues. I remember, in some of my earlier ventures, where we had problems making a $5,000 payroll on Friday, then it's $100,000 payroll on Friday. It's like,
that's right.
The issues can continue. And I love what you said about the profitability as well, because, we're spending, I chose to highlight CEOs on the show this year for 2018 because from the Inc. 5000, because I wanted to showcase what badass entrepreneurs are doing, what's making them get the results that they want. And it's really a two-pronged approach, because some of the emails that we send out is like, we'd love to have you on the show. Please come on. Tell us how you did it. And the other email that's going out to them is, congratulations on the Inc. 5000. Revenues look great. How's the profits? So it's a two-pronged approach when you said that about the profits.
Obviously we've been profitable or we wouldn't be on the list 6 straight years.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's one of the lessons I learned as an entrepreneur in the last couple of years. Everybody's focused on the top line.
Yeah.
But you really need to be focused on the bottom line, right?
Absolutely. It's similar to people that have just come into some money and people that are wealthy. The wealthy don't talk about income. They talk about net worth. Or they don't even talk about it, but that's what they're focused on. They're not focused on income. They're focused on net worth. Right. Great CEOs, great leaders are focused on profitability. They're focused on culture. They're focused on their people. The revenue is just an ego. It's what's great. The ones that I think don't really get it focus on the income piece. That's
right. I agree with you. And in the world we're in with technology and software industry, and you hear the term startup all the time. I hate that word. That just means you're not making money.
I'm gonna have to steal that. Startup equals not making money.
It's a code for we haven't made money.
Okay, I like that. and a lot of it's become, hey, how much capital can we raise? What's your capital raises? It reminds me of like the 2000s when it was like, how many eyeballs did you have? It's like, I don't know. How about dollars? So what are some of the lessons? You're in a great space because, things are, we get the phone call from a business that is in some cases struggling. They're struggling with their profitability. And right away, it's an industry that, quite frankly, is a difficult industry to make a profit in. Let's take the restaurant business, for example. Probably will be around for a while, but there's some industries that won't be. You're in the tech space, which will continue unless there's something that's going to take over tech. I'm not quite sure what that'll be, but you're in a growing industry. What are some of the things that you did in the past that, looking back, you're like, I wish we kind of positioned ourselves a little bit differently? Is there some decisions that you made that, with the knowledge that you have now, would you have done something a little bit differently?
So for the first probably, I don't know, 6 years of STS Education, 90% of our revenue was generated by one product, which was we are one of the largest suppliers of refurbished, we call it Second Life hardware schools. And we kind of didn't recognize the shift to Chromebooks early enough. So most refurbished computers are Windows devices, they're not Chrome devices. So that did affect us. So, we had a rough year of adjustment when our margins dropped quicker than anticipated because we moved to selling new equipment, which historically have lower margin. And so I wish we would have recognized that earlier, I guess would be the biggest lesson, and gotten into that and gotten our cost structure right earlier rather than having to do a lot of pain.
So the refurbished is really where the greater margins are?
Yeah. I mean, in used equipment to schools, the margins might be 30%, and in new equipment, it's 11.
Wow.
11.5%.
A big difference. Now, where do you get your refurbished equipment from?
All over the world. We import
do
from
companies send it in, or does it?
Australia, New Zealand, you name it, Canada, and the US.
Interesting. So is it companies that are in the refurbishment business, or are they just sending a bunch of unfurbished ones that you then refurbish? How's it coming to you?
Unfurbished. That's a good word. We're typically buying from asset management companies.
Okay.
So big company will lease their technology. They don't typically buy it because they know what the fixed cost is going to be every year. It's under a maintenance contract.
Okay.
It's easier to predict cash flow, and it's a depreciating asset, let's face it. So at the end of the lease term, some asset management company usually comes in and takes those off their hands, wipes all the data off of it, and then sells it to someone like me who does the refurbishing.
Fascinating. I've got a buddy of mine in Southern California that does recycling of equipment. And before they can, do anything with it and tear it apart, they've got to make sure all that stuff is wiped clean. It's fascinating how the control systems that are needed to be in place for, the companies making sure that all this data is removed. I mean, it's a serious business. It's under lock.
Yeah, when you go into some place like the hospital, they actually do the data destruction on-prem.
Yeah.
They'll go in with a truck that has a camera in it, so you can see every device, and time stamped. That's how sensitive it is.
What have you learned in working with schools? It's a different buyer. What's unique about that space that, an entrepreneur that's selling, to B2B doesn't experience?
Well, I love the customers. I mean, they're not generally professional buyers, so they're friendly. They don't grind you down. They pretty much will tell you where you need to be to get their business. When you find a customer, as long as you do them right, you have a customer for life. I have a lot of my customers who have turned into friends. We call and they just ask me about my business. and they want to know what they're interested in our growth just as much as we're interested in their success. And that's really what a partnership should be about. We both, want to see each other prosper.
Yeah.
And I think schools are looking for partners versus suppliers.
That's a good point. I used to have a company, Beckley Cardi, I think was the name. It was a school supply company up in Duluth, Minnesota, which did pencils and pads and different. And was that what it was? It was supplies. Beckley Cardi School Supplies or something was the name. But that's it. They're not looking for a supplier. They're looking for a partner. I like that. Who is your end user in a school?
Well, I mean,
the buyer. Not the end user, but the buyer. Who are you selling to? The principal? The teacher?
It depends on the product. We typically talk to traditionally the chief technology officer who's doing most of the buying decisions, but because we've branched into things that revolve around collaboration, student engagement, or STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. So that's like 3D printers, virtual reality, coding. Now we start talking to curriculum people and even principals at schools. Because there's lots of pockets of technology money. Not one person controls 100% of it.
Got it. And do you ever go out and try to secure funding or grants or something on their behalf? It all comes down to the money, right? If they had more money, they'd buy more of a technology.
It's something we talked about, getting into grant writing. But right now, I just pointed to resources. There are some interesting resources for teachers like Donors Choose. They can go on and write mini grants. We get a list of all the grant opportunities as well, but I typically just pass those on to schools if they're interested.
Got it. What's the future look like? How is it going to evolve? How is the company going to change? What do you see in the future?
Well, it's a good question for me now because we are in transition. I have a partner who's talking about his next phase of life and what he wants to do. He's a little bit older than I am. So his wife would like him to retire rather than later. So, for us, it's finding the right vehicle to get him what he needs to go into the rest of his life. Whether that's just having someone come in and invest and take him out, or we've had conversations with investors. I think there's a real opportunity in our market to do a roll-up company. A lot of companies in our space are having a hard time understanding how to make money in the age of the Chromebook. Yeah. If it's commoditized, or it's commoditized vendors, it's taken a lot of the value out of being a vendor. And it's been really, they're training customers to start shopping based on price.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of issues in our industry. There's a lot of companies our size that are struggling to figure out how to make money. So there is opportunity there if we want to grow, and we do. I want to grow. I want to build something great, and lasting. And I'm not. I always tell people who ask, the minute I feel like I've got enough, like I'm big enough, and I'm making enough money, is the minute I'll sell the business, because the people who work for me, they're not satisfied. I'm sure of that. They want to continue to grow. And if I'm not growing the business, they're not growing. So I still want to grow for myself and for them.
Well, at 2016, you're at 28 million. That's a pretty good start to a platform. Get 2 or 3 more of those. You've got a $100 million platform, a little private equity money.
There you go.
Come on, I'm seeing the future.
Yeah, that would be the plan.
Yeah. I'm sure, look, if there's not a consolidation play in your market going on right now, that's what these guys look for.
We have giant corporations in our space that basically do just sell based on price, that are billions of dollars, and it's hard to compete against them. When they want the business, they can have it, if it's based on price.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why margins are shrinking in our industry for most resellers.
Is there some sort of add-on or bolt-on additional service that's not asset-based that could be a good margin generator?
Yeah, I mean, all what we call white glove service.
Okay. Explain a little bit of that to us.
In the old days, we would ship a box to a customer. They would open it and they'd set it up the way they wanted. They'd load the software on it, configure it, asset tag it, whatever they needed to do, and then deploy it to their customer. Nowadays, most schools want that device ready to go when it arrives. So there's an opportunity for us to do that work here. Asset tag the device, domain enrollments, customizing, loading software, even going on site doing deployment. So one thing we know about schools is they never have enough money and they never have enough people to do the work. And so that's where a vendor like myself can add value. We can take a lot of the load off of their plate and deliver a complete solution.
And you can start a class also in your warehouse for students to come in as unpaid interns to actually do all this work.
And I do that. I mean, we do have, we do some job shadowing. We've had youth come into our building and talk to our employees about the struggles they may have gone through when they were in high school. We have a model classroom full of latest technology and furniture that our customers come into for professional development. The kids, computer clubs have come here, and some of them have turned into real jobs. I've had some people here who started as summer employees who now work full time. So yeah, we do a lot of that.
Good. What's some of your advice you have for other entrepreneurs that are kind of going through a similar progression? They started off small. They were in their garage. They've now they've built it into a real company. What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way that, you'd like to share with the audience? Don't do what I did or do what I did.
It's all about growth. First of all, I had to grow personally. For 8 years, I just managed my mom, and really she managed me. So I didn't have to manage anybody. Now we have 50 employees, so I had to grow into that position and be willing to grow that position and realize that I needed to develop skills around managing people. And then, making the transition from being entrepreneurial run to professional run, right? That means that you have to start getting a little bit rigid about some of the things you do. You need repeatable processes. You're not constantly reinventing and making mistakes. So putting in processes that allow you to be more efficient, finding the leakage, right? Where's all the money going? And there's a lot of that as you grow. And when you're going fast and the money's coming in, you don't think about it too much, but at some point your growth is going to slow and the dollar's going to matter. Yep. And so putting things in from just going from like QuickBooks to some full-blown ERP system, right? Which can save you a lot of money, but you're making a decision based on the fact that it's going to cost you $100,000 to implement it, plus a lot of time. And I don't have someone here necessarily who's dedicated to that. On the other hand, it's going to make more efficient, probably save money in the long run. Right. So there's always those kind of decisions. But I guess putting the processes in place to understand, how to evaluate those decisions and move forward on them. And then not getting distracted by every shiny new thing, which is one of the biggest problems I had and still have for years. I have a million ideas, and I want to pursue them all. And I'm the boss, so I can't pursue them all.
Right.
But thank God I have some people here who feel comfortable enough telling me, no, we still need to focus on this, before we move to something new. So,
yeah. Well, we're fortunate, not only to have people that are, struggling with their profitability, but we also have people, clients that are highly, highly profitable organizations that bring us in and say, okay, find out how to make us another 3%. Really dial this thing in for us. And all the ones that are ultra, ultra profitable and have huge businesses, they say no to just about everything. To get them to say yes to something their lane is so small. They are so focused. If it's one thing that stands out between those that are really killing it and those that, want to, is they know how to say no, and they make no bones about it.
Yeah, I think there's a data though also going the other way. I mean, we just had an example in our own company where our conservative nature came back to bite us in the butt, and we missed an opportunity.
Yeah, and let me explain something, because there's a very good point. No one's actually ever challenged me on that point, and you bring up a good point. They don't say no to opportunities that enable their company to evolve. They just won't get into other opportunities or offshoots. They have a goal that we're going to create $1 billion organization. That's the goal. If anything comes in there that's like, hey, let's do this little offshoot that'll produce another 25 million in like this separate, but supportive business, they're like, no. What about no? It's like they're always heading towards that North Star of that one.
How does this create long-term value for the stakeholders?
Yes.
Versus transactional revenue that allows me to make a little bit extra money this year, but it's not sustainable. Yeah. And I guess for us, I almost look like at our curated set filter as one of those things that gets me to say no. Because as you can imagine, when we get to a certain scale, I have people who want to sell into education calling me every day, sell my product. And I always have to ask them and ask myself, tell me why this should be sold into education. If you can't answer that question, then the answer is no, I'm not going to sell it, because I want to maintain that purity, right? That's my thing. Yeah. It's got to be a curated, purpose-built product for us to sell.
Yeah. And they're willing to change. One particular client, took $100 million business and basically imploded it because they said the future is not there. It's somewhere else. Same general direction, and that takes a lot of guts to go, okay, we've got 100 million of revenue coming in, and we're not going to pursue that lane anymore, because in 5 years it may not be there.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when he talked to his investors and said, I'm doing this.
Private company.
But you have to have conviction.
Yeah.
And you know what? You can do all the financial analysis you want, but at some point in time, there's intuition. And there's an online blog. I heard this on another someone else's podcast. I think it's called The Source. I'm trying to find my notes.com. And it talks about workwithsource.com, it's called. And it talks about this concept of Gestalt.
Yeah.
Where the person who founded or created or came up with the initial idea for a company or a business sometimes has this intuitive understanding of what's the right thing to do, even if they can't verbalize it or show it on paper. It's similar to like how a mother might have a feeling about their child. Like my wife all the time, I just have this feeling. Yeah. Even though I'm helping raise that child, I don't have the same connection as she does.
Right.
And it's same with founders. A lot of times with businesses, they just have an intuitive feel. And then what's the word I'm looking for? There's butting of heads when you intuitively have a feeling for what needs to be done, but nobody else recognizes it, right? Those are the things that tend to agitate me. Like, why are we doing it? Because I know this is the right thing to do, even if I can't verbalize it to you, and when I get pushback from people who, from the outside, that's tends to be when I get upset, right? Because I just have this feeling of this is the way we need to go. So sometimes you need to use intuition.
No question. There's actually a lot of studies that have shown that the cellular structure of our stomach is closely related to the cellular structure of our brains. Our hearts, our stomachs, and our brains share a very similar structure. So when people say, I've got a gut feeling, there's some research that actually says that the stomach and the heart could be another form of a brain.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting stuff, but women definitely have better senses there than a lot of times we do. They're just wired a little bit differently. If you see a lot of your peers, did you go to the Inc. 5000 or Inc. 500 kind of get together?
No, I have never gone to any of them.
You haven't gone to any. Okay, so I can't ask any questions around. Do you have any peers in California that you know, or?
Yes, I do know a couple companies we work with that have made the list as well.
Okay, all right. So then I can ask the question now. What do you see some of the similarities with the companies that make the list Is there something that you can draw kind of a line or a common thread that runs between the leadership or the organizations?
I wish I had an answer for you, but honestly, I don't. I mean, I think there's a zillion ways to get where you want to go,
Yeah.
And maybe that is the thread, that everyone follows their own path.
Maybe. What makes you great?
Well, I don't think I'm great. That's number one. In fact, I was writing about this morning in my journal. I'm into Stoic philosophy, and today's thought was about, don't tell yourself a story. Don't brag to other people about all the success you have. And I was kind of reflecting on that. Sometimes you have the urge to say, come on in and see my building. You're going to just be so impressed by what we're doing. On the one hand, I'm like, no, because I know I'm only doing that because I want to try to show off. But on the other hand, I go the other way as well. I think I'm a complete failure all the time. Like nothing's ever good enough.
Yeah. We all do that. We all go through that. We question, it sometimes it becomes the compare game, right? I always try to only compare myself to who I could be. Because anytime you look around, I mean, it's real easy. And we never compare ourselves or our organizations to people that aren't doing as well, right? We always compare ourselves to everyone's like, they've got the bigger building, they've got the more employees, they've got, what looks like better profits, they've got better sales. We never look and go, wow, okay, yeah, I see they're kind of struggling. I guess I'll compare myself against them.
Well, there's always people who are better.
No question. No question. But you are doing some things right. I mean, you've got this dialed in. You may not have all the answers, which none of us do, but there are some things that you're really doing. It sounds like you've created an amazing culture. You're continuing to train the team. You remain in a position where you're highly coachable, and you're saying, what else do I need to learn? I need to be reading. I need to be feeding my mind. I need to be growing and expanding as a CEO and as a man. So whether you consider yourself great or not, I'm going to put you in the great category.
Oh, thank you.
Because of what you've done, but also I love the attitude and the way that you're continuing to grow. Because I will tell you this, even though you haven't been to any of the events, I've had the opportunity to know a lot of the folks on the Inc. 5000 over the years, and some have gotten a little full of themselves, and it certainly hasn't happened to you. And I know much success is in the future for you, because you're going to be a different man next year and the year after that as you continue to grow.
I hope so.
Yeah, no question. Tell us how the audience can get in touch with you. Hopefully we've got a CMO on the line from a school district. So I want to make sure they know how to get a hold of you.
Well, of course, you can just go to our website, which is stseducation-us.com. My email address is mark.netka@stseducation-us.com. Those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
Terrific. Well, Marc, thanks very much for carving out some time to give the audience some of your background and some of your wisdom. I really appreciate that. And great job with the company. And we look forward to seeing you on the list next year.
Well, great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.